right, welcome back, everybody, to Real Talk Realty Podcast, where we put the real in real estate. You're with your host, JD.
And Gabby.
And Louie Namick.
And we have a very, very special guest, someone near and dear to our hearts, Dave Zumbrunn from Friends Title and Escrow here in Frederick. This is Dave's first podcast, so we're super excited to have him on here. You know, it took us a while to really find a couple options as far as title attorneys that we prefer to work with, and I know that since I've been in the business now coming up on 6 years, Dave is my go-to. So Friends Title, they handle all my transactions, and so today we're going to talk a little bit about what a title company's responsibility is inside of a real estate transaction and why they're important. A lot of times, if you've never bought in a home, your agent may ask you, do you have a title company in mind? And most of you, I would say 90% of you say, what's a title company? Yeah. Or what do they do in this transaction? So Dave, thanks for coming on. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and Friends Title and what you guys kind of do?
Gotcha. Well, thank you, first off, for having me on. So about me. So I started in this business as a mortgage guy, right? So I started back in 2000, so 25 years ago. And I was a mortgage loan originator, and then I managed branches, and I had my own branch. And so I did a lot on the mortgage side. And then I even went to work at Fannie Mae. I was an underwriter there, managed underwriters, and then later on to manage credit policy and credit risk. So deep mortgage experience. Went to law school along the way and started a title company. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had no idea that you were in mortgages for that long.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
And that gives you a lot of, I would say, leverage and just knowledge in the process. When you're seeing some deals potentially fall apart or something due to financing, you might be able to throw in a little bit of a creative bone in there to help save some things.
For sure. Yeah, we work with, and we can kind of spot newer loan officers or those that don't have experience, and then we have a lot of confidence in those that we do know have a lot of experience. So, that kind of gives us a gauge to say, oh, you know what, we're not too worried that we don't have a package from this particular lender yet because they're on it. They're always good. Right. And but the other ones we're kind of riding them a little bit more to say, hey, let's get those loan docs in.
Yeah. That's a nice way of saying that who's doing, who's hustling and who's not hustling. Yeah. And you guys have been doing some pretty big expanding lately. I know it's just since I started working with you. I think I've been working with you now steadily for about 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And you guys just opened a branch in Hagerstown?
Oh, and then some.
Oh.
So we started Friends Title back in August of 2021. And since then, we opened our first office was in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, because I'm a licensed attorney there and also here in Maryland. And then shortly after, we opened our Maryland office in March of 22. Just this past February, we opened our Hagerstown office. And actually just this week, we opened our Cumberland, Maryland office.
What? Wow. Hey, hit that applause there. Wow. No way. Yes. That's awesome.
Really,
that's like 2 expansions in like a couple months, I feel like.
Really, really exciting. The Cumberland office is a little bit smaller. It's a satellite office. We go there, do closings, and then leave. So it's kind of by appointment only.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's just really exciting to see.
Did you do that because you were getting a decent amount of business coming in from the Cumberland area?
That's it.
Wow.
That's it. Yep.
That's awesome. That is really cool. And actually, Dave is very tied into the Frederick area as well. I mean, it seems to be like some of my most favorite agents. It's great whenever I'm on the listing side and I see that they also are using Friends Title. I'm like, yes, okay, let's do this. Because it's always smooth. And, settlements is usually a time where it can either be a very smooth and fun settlement or it can be, totally the opposite, depending on obviously how the transaction went. But that's where Dave's expertise really comes in and knowing how to deal with people, because it's the end of the road. It's the last day of the thing. And he's there to kind of make it as smooth as possible, even if the situation leading up to it maybe was not as smooth.
Things always come up, It's home inspections and, whether the lender's giving the borrower a hard time or whatever the case may be, if it's a tougher deal, but that's it. This is the kind of thing that the buyers and the sellers are going to take away from the transaction. This is their last real experience. So
Right.
Yep.
So Dave, explain your role for those who don't know what a title company is. Explain what your role is in the buying and selling, transaction.
Yeah. Well, to JD's point earlier, right? A lot of people are like, what's title?
Yeah.
Right? So So title, I'm an attorney, right? Most title companies, not all, but most, the good ones, are owned by attorneys, right? And managed and operated by attorneys. And what we do is we look at the public record and we search to make sure that there's no other liens on title, that there's no judgments against the seller, no back taxes or anything like that, so that when the buyer does take ownership of the property, they are getting good, clean ownership, and there's no liens or judgments or anything else or that's going to come back to them.
Could you give us a scenario or maybe one that you have seen in the past where there wasn't necessarily a clean title or there was some judgments or something that maybe stopped the entire transaction from actually taking place?
I'll give you an example of a really close call that we had. So probably about 2 years ago, we had a transaction come in and we did the title search, everything else, and came up with one mortgage on title and everything else was pretty much clear. And then, as we're, getting ready for closing, about a week before closing, we sent the agents and the seller a copy of their the proposed settlement statement. And they said, what about our home equity line of credit? And I said, boy, what home equity line of credit? So this property was in Baltimore City. And it takes forever to record documents in Baltimore City.
Oh, my gosh.
It's the slowest jurisdiction in Maryland. And they had gotten a home equity line of credit to fix up their house and get it ready to sell. Totally normal, right? Mm-hmm. But except for the fact that we didn't know anything about it because, it took forever to get that deed of trust recorded. So we found out, we got the information, got the payoff, didn't hold up closing at all, and everything was great. But, wow. And had they not spoke up and said something, that would have been a big deal.
Right.
Well, with that said, for those of us who don't know what title insurance is, can you explain?
Yes. So, perfect example. We'll use that same example and we'll go forward. And what if the sellers didn't say anything, right? Mm-hmm. So the buyers would have bought their house, right? And they would have got their mortgage. But then somewhere along the lines, that home equity line of credit from the sellers would have gotten recorded, and that would have been in first lien position, and we would have had a title claim because, the buyers wouldn't have known to continue paying on it. The sellers presumably would have stopped paying on it.
Yeah.
So
first lien in position, meaning that they're owed the money first.
Right.
Right.
So they could have initiated foreclosure proceedings.
Wow.
Ahead of the buyer's mortgage and against the buyer for their property. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So that definitely protects the buyer.
Absolutely. First we would go to the seller and say, hey, did you forget something? Right. And, it's time to pay off that home equity line of credit. And, we would obviously try to get that resolved very quickly. But in the event that we couldn't, we're going to file a title claim and our title insurer is going to back up that buyer and make sure that they keep their house and nothing happens to them.
So when a buyer purchases title insurance, are there different levels of title insurance?
You're exactly right. So that's there's 3 different flavors of title insurance, right? There's lender's title insurance, which is required by the lender on every single loan when they issue a new loan. Whether you refinance or you purchase, the lender wants title insurance. And then there's owner's title insurance. Right? And there's 2 different flavors of owner's title insurance. There's kind of a basic title insurance for owner's title insurance, which, has some limited protections, would have certainly protected against that home equity line of credit risk. Mm-hmm. But then there's an enhanced version of owner's title insurance that has far more coverage options. And it's a little bit more expensive. And it's only limited to people that are going to live in the home as their primary residence. So if it's an investment property or if it's vacant land or commercial property, they couldn't get the enhanced owner's title insurance. But it's certainly worth the investment.
Yeah, I definitely recommend for everybody to get
it's your largest investment. Why wouldn't you want to protect it?
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Definitely get the enhanced version.
Dave, now I'm sure you've encountered a lot of people that'll say, oh, well, why do I need this or I don't need this? What do you say to those? I mean, does everybody need title insurance or would you recommend that everybody get title insurance?
I absolutely would, right? So if let's say you bought your house free and clear, right? No mortgage, just paid cash. You're not required by law to get homeowner's insurance. Mm-hmm. Oh, what if it burns down? What if you have a major flood in the house?
Or live in Arkansas and have your house destroyed by a tornado?
Right. I I had hail damage. We had a big hailstorm a couple of weeks ago, and I've got hail damage from my roof. And
Really?
the insurance is covering. I'm getting a new roof.
Wow.
Really?
You know,
wow.
It's pretty awesome, right? But insurance covers these things.
Yeah.
Right. We had a more simple title claim a couple of years ago where the sellers made improvements to the house, right? They finished the basement. They did a couple of things, but they didn't get permits. And then the buyers bought the house, and buyers started getting letters from Carroll County that said, hey, you didn't get permits. So we filed a title claim on their behalf, and it all got taken care of.
Oh, so that even covers that kind of stuff.
Yes, the enhanced policy would cover that.
Oh, wow.
So how does that work? If Carroll County is wanting to collect fees for not having a permit, does it go back to the previous seller?
Oh, yeah. The title insurance agent, the claims attorneys are going to go after the sellers
Wow.
Right.
to make things right.
And then will they issue a permit, or will they send somebody out, or will they just not care about that anymore?
They'll see the whole process through with the homeowner and make sure that it's all taken care of.
Got it.
Yep.
Wow, that
The
is
seller
something
will
else.
be responsible.
Yeah.
For
At
all
the
you
end of the
guys
day.
selling a house out there, be honest.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and the other thing too is among the documents that a seller would typically sign at closing would be the deed and the settlement statement. Everybody expects and knows those, right? But those other documents, right? Those other documents include an owner's affidavit, right? Which says, hey, there are no other liens or judgments or anything else against the title to this property. And there's also a survey affidavit that says there's no issues with their property boundary lines. We got all the permits needed to make any improvements, and we paid any contractors, right? So there's no mechanics liens that could be out there.
So title insurance, does it cover, let's say you purchase a home, right?
Yep.
And 2 years later, somebody comes along and says, hey, this is my house.
Or they say my grandfather's cousins, sisters, brothers, uncles
owns this house.
built this house, and they never sold it, and I don't know how, you know.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
So the new buyer who's been in there for 2 years, what happens to them?
That's their house.
Yeah.
That's their house, and they'll file a title claim, and the title insurance, the claims attorneys will represent them and take care of it all.
Now, let's say they didn't get title insurance. Then what happens?
Boy, they're going to spend a lot of money on attorney's
Yeah.
fees.
So I actually met someone, I think like last year, who was telling me a story about her grandma had a house in Mount Airy. Out of nowhere, one day, like these moving trucks came, like all these people were coming to move into the house. So she never bought title insurance. And apparently these people somehow bought this house that wasn't even for sale. And it was like a whole big mess. And she had said, like, I learned my lesson. They always asked me when I was reaching out to attorneys, did I get title insurance? Did I? And I didn't. She's like, so now I'm screwed paying attorneys, trying to figure all this out. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's
A
crazy.
lot of people just don't know
Yeah.
what they don't know, right? So
Right.
that's why this podcast is so important to
Educate.
educate people.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we'll come across people every now and then. You know what? I'm okay with the risk. Boy, I tell you, you might get lucky. Maybe there is no issue.
Right.
But, in the case of your clients, Gabby, I mean, boy, an attorney probably bills out $250 to $500 an hour,
That's the
maybe
other thing.
even more. And if your title insurance policy costs $2,000 or $2,500, boy, that's not a lot of hours that you would have been paying for, and this coverage is for the entire time that you own the home, and it's a one-time premium. Unlike car insurance and life insurance and homeowners insurance and everything else where you're paying every 6 months or a year, this is one time when you buy your house, and that's it.
Let me ask you this. So sometimes, I haven't had this happen very often, but it does happen sometimes where somebody is, you ask them, hey, do you have a preferred title company or somebody that you want to use? And they say, oh, I'm just going to push it to like my family attorney or somebody or that can do this. What are there advantages, disadvantages versus just like a single attorney versus an actual title company?
So we do title. That's what we do. We close between 50 and 100 transactions a month. And we're really good at it.
Yeah.
And, if you deal with some, random attorney that, maybe they're a family law attorney or they're a litigating attorney, maybe they can do a title search.
Right.
Maybe. Right. But, certainly if I'm going through some sort of a criminal proceeding, I'm going to hire the best criminal lawyer I can find.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And, you know, how many people are going to, you know, go and protect their biggest asset, right? And then hire an attorney that doesn't even do that business, right?
Wow.
That seems
so
crazy
true.
to me.
You
That
got-
is so true.
Yep, that's absolutely true. You got to stay in your lane.
That's it.
So what sets Friends Title apart from, say, other title attorneys here in the area?
You know, I think it's our team, right? Our team they go above and beyond all the time. You know, we walked out of the office pretty much all together at 6:30 last night, you know, or at least some of us. And, you know, they will go the extra mile.
I know from personal experience that I have hit Dave up after hours. I feel bad when I do it, but I'm like the type of person sometimes where my brain's not even activated until the sun comes down. And then I start thinking about anything that could be going wrong with any of my transactions or whatever. And I'll shoot.
You just do it because you know he's going to answer the phone.
Yeah, maybe I take advantage of it a little bit, but
No,
I know that he'll get back to me, and that is like such the communication aspect of it. Like you said, having a team and the way that you guys have that organized, and I've seen you over the last couple of years add more team members. It's like the office now walking into, you know, was a little I could tell when it was a little new, and now it's like this fully blown like big monster. Like it's awesome.
I had the privilege of getting a settlement done at your office 2 weeks ago, and I have to say that you named your title company absolutely perfectly.
Yes.
Friends. Because
Yep.
when I walked in there, I was greeted, and I felt like these people were my friends.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, that is
Yeah.
I think about that all the time. I'm like, that name alone
It's
is just
perfect.
like genius.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is genius. And I walked in there, we had the best customer service. Awesome. And then the office is spectacular. It's a
Yeah.
really, really great
I mean, they
office.
have candies at the table for you.
Drinks.
Like, they come and like serve you. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I've worked with a lot of title companies, and now I try everything I can to only go with Friends. Like, I've had bad experience. They don't pick up the phone. They take forever to respond to an email. Like, and with Friends, like I'll have them emailing me. Like if I forget something, hey, do you want to schedule, settlement? And
Right.
like others, like they're just slow. They lack communication.
Yeah.
And you just like you don't feel that like that love, like that friend thing. You
Right,
know?
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And they're downtown and only a half a mile from our office.
You know what's funny is the first person I ever met from Friends Title, I actually met Bill Lawson before I met Dave. And I met Bill over actually Amy Wolf, who we just had on here. She was having one of her client appreciation type things over at Direct Mortgage Loans in Frederick. And it was in the parking lot. And I had just had Dean. So he was like this little tiny potato, you know. And I went over there and Bill was like, let me see that baby. And like he held the baby. And I was like, wait a second. Like, does this mean I can like go crack a beer and like hang out for a second? Like, and Bill's like, don't worry about it, I got it. And I was like, and then Curtis, who's another local real estate agent that we all love, he said, man, you really got to check out Friends Title. He's like, Bill and Dave, everybody over there is great people. He's like, that's the only people I use. So I said, okay, I'll throw him a deal and see how it goes. Because at that point in time, I wasn't fully devoted to anybody. I was still just kind of like up in the air.
Yeah.
And ever since, it's just been off to the races.
Well, it just so happens that 2 weeks ago, that transaction I had over at Friends was with Curtis.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's funny.
Curtis highly recommended Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wait, so were you on the seller side or the buyer side?
I was on the buyer side.
Oh, okay, cool. That's awesome. And then so he had it. Did he have it to where like we prefer to use Friends?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. See, that's what I'm talking about. When you see that on something, I'm like,
Yeah.
all right,
Well,
this is cool.
I had it on my MLS listing that we preferred our title.
Yeah.
And we had a little conversation back and forth.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, I've had so many bad experiences with title company that now I'll try to like negotiate when I'm on the selling side. Like, hey, we need to use this title company.
Absolutely.
gosh.
Yes.
Like my people are comfortable with this. So Dave, really thank you. You guys are like amazing. I will not, if I can, I will not use another title company. You guys are literally amazing.
Let me ask you this, Dave. Do you guys do commercial too? How does that? Okay, cool.
We do.
So I haven't really dabbled too much in the commercial space, but I was just curious to know if there was any differences from residential to commercial and what that looks like.
There can be a lot of differences on your side, right, as the agent, right, dealing with a lot of different types of inspections, environmental inspections, feasibility studies, and and everything else, depending on the nature of the property and everything else. From our perspective, there's not too much difference, right? Because we're still searching the public record. We're researching into the company, right? Because, even in the residential space, we deal with a lot of landlords and, people buying and selling investment properties. So we're always investigating the companies, right, to make sure that, ABC Rentals LLC is actually owned by the person that says they own it. Right. So we're always doing that kind of due diligence anyway. So, it's not a big stretch on the title side to do commercial.
That's a big responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of pressure on you to make things
For sure.
Make sure you get things right.
I just thought of a great Friends title story. Actually, I was just sitting. I did not think about this before. It just hit me. So I had I have an investor that I work with, and we've done maybe 4 or 5 transactions together. He buys little condos here in Frederick, and one of the condos that he ended up buying was realtor owned. So this realtor, I'm not going to say who it was, but owned this property, and right after settlement, the tenant that was in the property that my client was then taking over was going to be their new landlord, paid that month's rent to the old seller. So 2 days after settlement, they had paid the person who does not own it anymore, right? And so I'm like, oh my gosh. And now my seller, the buyer, is hitting me up, and he's going, hey, where's this rental check? And I'm like doing some research, and I reach out to the tenant, and the tenant says, oh yeah, no, I paid it. I paid it to so-and-so. And I said, oh, so that you paid it to somebody that's not your landlord, So I hit up Dave, and I'm kind of panicked, and I'm like, Dave, what do we do here? This guy's out like $1,600. And so Dave types up a nice email, a very nice email, and sends it over. And within 2 days, I think it was 2 or 3 days, we got my buyer paid, the landlord. And I was like, man, see, but coming from me, because I had actually tried to reach out to this agent several times.
There's a difference between regular lingo and lawyer lingo.
Oh no, for sure.
You know the difference.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because he didn't respond to me for like 3 or 4 days, and as soon as I went to Dave, and then Dave sent an email, magically my guy gets paid like 2 days later. So I'm like, all right, these are the types of problems I'm going to bring to Dave at 6 p.m. on a Friday.
You always start with the nice email first.
So Dave, you said you guys are West Virginia and Maryland right now, or?
Oh, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Florida.
Ooh. Whoa. Look at that. That's awesome.
That's
okay,
awesome. Okay,
I
so
have 1 foot in Florida.
yeah, you do.
I have 1 foot in Florida.
Literally.
There you go.
So let's say you have a Florida client or something. You guys have the ability to do remote settlements, correct?
Oh, we do. I love that. It's kind of the next level in technology, right? So the legal world in general just moves at a glacial pace, right? So everything is still paper for the most part, and it's very frustrating. But, we're starting to see that world kind of move forward. So we actually do remote online notary closings. And there's a couple different ways that I've seen it done, where, they have this platform where people are signing on, and it's kind of like DocuSign plus Zoom, right?
Yeah.
So they're on video and everything else, and then on pops this notary that, is in, Kansas or whatever, wherever they are, and they're kind of conducting your closing, and I'm sitting there as the title attorney. Yep, this is that. Okay, yep. And the notary's there too, and it's just kind of a clunky experience. So when we rolled it out, we did it a different way, and I actually became an online notary as well.
Oh.
So I have conducted closings in Florida. I've conducted closings in Maryland and West Virginia and everything else, where the party is in that's actually signing, the seller typically, or cash buyer, is in another country. They could be in Costa Rica on the beach.
Wow.
And actually, we had one recently where we had one buyer that was local, but the kids were home, and that person's spouse was in Vegas on a work trip, and the buyer was in, the cash buyer was in Costa Rica, and it just, the schedules were tough, right? The one person that was in Vegas traveled all the time for work. The guy in Costa Rica was coming back, but then the other two were leaving. So hey guys,
that's
why don't
chaos.
we have a cash transaction? Why don't we just close virtual?
Yeah.
You guys you could do it right from your smartphone, believe it or
Right.
not.
Nice.
That's amazing.
And it just smooth as can be, and it worked out great.
I've seen before too where you guys will like FedEx a whole package to somewhere, you know, next day it or whatever, and then they'll sign it with either if they have a notary themselves or whatever, and then they'll FedEx it next day back to you guys. But just being able to be creative like that in situations where, you know, people are scattered throughout the country is such a value standpoint as far as being able to do this, because, you know, not all title companies will travel. Not all title companies are going to bend a little bit to help get a deal done.
Oh, there are companies out there that will not do anything
At all.
It's their way or the highway.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm just, you know, for us, and especially our team, and as much volume as we do, we need somebody that's reliable that we can just really call on and get things done, you know?
Absolutely.
It's very, very important. And for our audience, it's very important that when you're going to be buying a house or selling a house, it's important to choose the right title company. I cannot overstate that.
Yep.
It could be the meaning between a really rough settlement
Transaction,
or
yeah.
a smooth transaction. And I think that we have a great friend here.
Yep.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Your agency does a fantastic job, and we really appreciate all that you do.
So if you're deciding to use us as your agents or not, that doesn't really matter as much, but make sure you call Dave Zumbrunn over at Friends Title, because he will definitely take care of you, and I wouldn't tell you to do that unless I was absolutely sure that it was going to be a smooth experience. But we're going to wrap it up today. We really appreciate you guys hopping on and checking out our podcast. I really appreciate Dave hopping on here today.
Thank you, Dave.
And
Thank you.
you're going to see some more guests coming up here in the future, but we hope you guys have a wonderful week, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.